Hello, Dave.
Hey Jimmy, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. I'm sad about some of the stuff that's,
Yep, yep.
going down, but
Well,
my health is good, and I've been completely quarantined. I've been out of the house. I went to the hardware store because I needed a little can of paint, but I've been here and I've been trying to lose some weight. I've been playing the piano a little bit. I'm working on a model airplane,
nice.
and so we've managed to hold it off so far. But knock 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 on wood. This is a hot spot. So, and then of course, this Floyd thing has really disturbed both of us deeply. So
I hear you, brother. It's a strange time to be doing anything, and that was really going to be my first question anyway. Actually, is what you've been doing during this time. I guess first, where are you that you're hunkering down?
we live on the North Shore of Long Island in a little village called Bayville.
Wow. Okay.
It's
Nice.
like Pleasantville, USA.
Well, you're deserving of it for all that you've given us, and especially during a time like this. And as we've been hearing from artists across the country on the show, there's just so many ways, and you've sort of said a little bit of it, but this crisis has touched folks from the tremendous loss of life, the economic downturn, countless stories we all sort of exposed to, whether it's in the paper, on your phone, on the TV, a lot of different kinds of challenges that we see folks going through. Just reflecting as I set it up like that, talk a little bit about how the pandemic has impacted you personally.
Well, the first thing about the pandemic that had impact and then some was that it really shut down our business. I've been playing. I was planning on playing 70 dates this year,
Mm,
and I came in off the road one like weekend on a Friday, I think it was, and on Monday they started canceling flights. I mean, it was right at the beginning, and I guess I was lucky because I could have been out there. I could
right.
have been out there in Cincinnati. No, nothing against Cincinnati, but I'm glad I didn't get stuck there and quarantined from my wife.
Right.
Um, so yeah, I mean, it pretty much knocked our business like all the wind out of it, and we've been thinking of different ways to communicate with people. We do a lot more Zooming, and I did a concert on Facebook. I didn't even announce it, Dave. I just sat down and started playing on Facebook. And I played about three or four songs, and I looked up, and there were 2,500 people watching it.
Right on.
And I thought, wow, this is a powerful thing. Um, so I think that we are all working. We being performers,
Hmm.
we are all working on a way to do our concert business. Um, and there's some bright there's some indication that if the first couple of rows in the auditorium are empty, that it provides the necessary distance to protect the performer and the audience. If the audience is wearing, masks, and if they're
Separated.
uh, separated properly. So anyway, that was the first thing, and then of course, uh, I believe that we've mishandled it. I think we've all mishandled it in the sense that we should have all been wearing masks. We should have all sequestered ourselves from the very beginning, and we'd be finished with this now. We could, but it's going to go. It's going to go on as long as people go around ignoring the rules. So I'm kind of bugs me to see that. But I don't. Then again, I don't know how you keep teenagers inside in the summer.
Right. Yeah.
It's like the Gordian knot. I mean, they'll find a way. Love will find it. Love will find a way, Dave.
Well, you hit the nail on the head on that one, my brother. I send you a virtual high five, and let's hope that's the case. And you're so right about it's just a confluence of stuff happening. It's a little bit hard for, I had to mail something at the post office the other day, and I was thinking, wow, there's just so much stuff going on. There's so much pressure I feel. And ironically, no joke, no exaggeration, the woman behind the counter just said her exact words, it's just so much pressure. It's so much stuff to take in at one time. So I really felt like, wow, what you were talking about, we all kind of connect on that. And when you were talking, two things. One, I think that's so cool. You look up, there's 2,500 people. You're doing a real concert all of a sudden there on the Facebook.
Yeah.
And then the other part, I'm sorry, what were we going to say?
No. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was really spontaneous, and I had no idea that how powerful it is to just start playing on the internet.
Well, it's like you're sharing your gift, though. I mean, that's one of the neat things about music through the years is it's something people turn to for relief. It's like there are so many times if you're having a hard time, there's a song, there are songs, maybe there's a band. I mean, so you, in a lot of ways, are providing some sort of unique, exclusive way of therapy for folks. And on that same kind of flipping it around, there have been you've been associated with so many people throughout your life, and anybody who reads your memoir, The Cake and the Rain, would be blown away by the stories, or you take a listen to Slipcover, all the people you've covered. When you think of some of the folks we've lost, musician-wise during this, or any of those cats, were they close to you in any ways? Has that been something?
Well, I knew a lot of them. I knew Joe Cocker really well. I knew Dr. John Mack. I knew him really well. And lots more. It's been the way I look at it. It's the old guard is stepping aside and making room for the new guard. And it's just that I think that there's a certain shock that comes with waking up and looking at the mirror and seeing a 73-year-old guy there and going, what the hell? When did this happen? Who did this? And because I want to get my hands on that guy. And, it comes, I may sound like, I hope I don't sound like Grandpa on the porch, but it comes so quickly. I mean, you turn 50 and then all of a sudden you better start filling that bucket list.
That's powerful advice.
And it's never too late to stop living. Excuse me.
To start living.
Never too late to start living.
Right on.
And really appreciating life and appreciating the people around you. You were talking about people. And I regard my career mainly as a phenomenon that was created by other people, but Johnny Rivers, Glenn Campbell, Mark Gordon, the Wrecking Crew, Hal Blaine, Larry Knechtel, all those guys, and then the Fifth Dimension, who were close friends, and just almost an endless stream of names of people that I can say, well, he gave me a hand there. Oh, wow, I caught a break. I remember this guy. He gave me a break once, and you start going through your head, and my head is full of people who've helped me out.
Mm.
Um, I wouldn't be here without their help. And a lot of them, a lot of them are gone, and that you have to then shift gears as you get older, and you need to appreciate old age because old age has its charms. It One of them is just the fact that when you look around, you really see things. You're not just scanning like a video screen. When you look around your yard and you see the flowers and you see the birds and you see each little detail, each little feather, the way each little thing works, and you stand by the ocean and you try to take that in. And I've been doing that my whole life, standing in front of the ocean and trying to get my head around it, trying to grasp it. And I think as you grow older, you become more capable of grasping large concepts like the ocean, like outer space, the universe, eternity. And Personally, I enjoy it. It's like, oh, I thought I was going to be like dribbling oatmeal on my shirt, you know. Instead, I'm like enjoying all these like far out thoughts,
And coming up with cool tunes. I mean, just riffing on some of what you said, and especially the way that friends have impacted your life and people have given you either suggestions or helped to align things in your career on this record, on the slipcover album. I mean, it's almost like you were describing the way Randy Newman, from what I read, and I could be wrong, I hope I'm not, but he had something to do with suggesting that concept. And when I think about the way you're approaching your age, that record just oozes everything you just said, reinterpreting those tunes in such a bare and soulful way. You can hear every little bit of the essence of you touching those keys on that thing.
Thank you. It was Randy Newman who suggested that I was over there and I was playing Marie because it's one of my favorite tunes. And I just kind of thoughtlessly started playing the maestro's piano, and I played Marie, and he said, "Hello." He hello again.
Everybody wants to talk to you.
Yeah. That I sat down at Randy's piano and I played a couple of verses of, what did I say it was?
Marie?
Marie. And Randy came walking in the room and said, "Hey, I didn't know you could play the piano." And he was kind of joking with me because he did. "You actually play the piano, He said, "Man, you ought to record some piano stuff." And I had my mouth open to say, "Oh, I've already done that." And I realized suddenly that in my whole life, 40, 50 years of recording all kinds of records and most genres of records, that I had never done an instrumental album. And I thought, this is the time to pay homage to the members of our generation who were real songwriters, in the sense that Harold Arlen was a songwriter, and Cole Porter was a songwriter, and Lerner and Lowe and Rodgers and Hammerstein and Yip Harburg and all the people in the Great American Songbook. And I started on that record, and it was such a joy to play. Dave, I can't tell you, it was like being 7 years old again, and not having to sing.
Right.
And,
well, I mean, the sound quality of that thing is when you put when you have cans on or headphones, you can hear It's hard to describe it, but the piano, as you know, is a very intricate instrument with a lot of stuff inside, a lot of little moving parts. And when it's mic'd properly, you can really get, it's powerful. It almost gives you chills. In Hawaii, we call it chicken skin because it's just this really,
Yeah.
because there's a lot more than just playing you know what I'm talking about, like the ambiance of all the little movements in there.
Well, absolutely. And, different pianos will speak to you in different ways. Um,
What was the one that
and
you did that on? What's the piano that was done on?
it was my piano. It sits right here in the living room. Two, two of the tracks I did over at Ricky Canada's in Glen Cove, and I did those on a Steinway, but most of them are on my Baldwin.
Okay.
And it's one of the most beautiful sounding Baldwin pianos, I think, in the world.
How long have you had it?
Um, well, I've had it at least 20 years.
Wow. Okay.
And my Yamaha, my original Grand that I wrote MacArthur Park on, has been in storage for almost that long. I'm almost afraid to go down and look at it because I loved it so much. And I have to tell you, storage doesn't do anything for anything.
Right.
It doesn't make anything better. So I'm hoping that maybe I can get that thing up and running. And I just simply don't have room for two concert grands in this house. But I would, if I could find a worthy place to donate it and maybe somebody to help me, help me on the wear and tear of moving it. And all of that stuff is really, it's pricey.
Right. That's a
And
production.
the renovation of the piano is really pricey. But it is a historic piano, and a lot of hit songs were written on it.
I like that.
And I love Yamahas too, by the way.
Yeah, well, that's cool how you pointed that out. They each have a different voice. I hadn't even thought of that, really, Jimmy.
If I walk on stage and look at the piano before I even play it, I can almost tell you what kind of a show I'm going to have.
Wow.
Like if I walk on and it's a Stuart Hamblin, I know I'm in trouble. Big trouble. It's going to be like chopping wood all night. And if I see a Steinway, I relax because I know it'll be, unless it's been neglected, it'll be at a certain level of perfection. Maybe not perfect, but it'll be at a threshold that's easily recognizable, and it'll be my partner. It'll be my partner. It'll help me get through the show. And if I go in and sit down and see a brand new Steinway, I know that this is going to be fun because the action's going to be fluid. All the dampers, all the sustain, all the pedals are going to be exquisitely, right. The touch on the piano is going to be beautiful. It's as you so aptly point out, it's a mechanical deal. I mean, it's a machine, and the keyboard is sort of the way you operate the machine. But there's 100 shades of gray,
right,
in the way you can play any given note. There are lots of different ways to play a note.
right.
And so if you multiply that by 10 fingers, there's hundreds of different ways to play, if not thousands or millions of ways to play almost anything.
That's such a great point, considering the variety of material on there too. What you just said is really remarkable, because also one of the neat things of covering songs when artists do it well. I mean, there's a variety of ways you can cover a song and be really faithful to the original, and you can have done a great thing, or you can do yours is very interpretive. It's kind of thing you can put on at night and just sit there and kind of trance out to, and you'll feel the groove or the original melody or the riff of the tune that you know, but at the same time you're kind of taking it into its own place. Some of the artists on there: Joni Mitchell, Randy Newman, Stevie Wonder, Paul McCartney, Billy Joel, Rolling Stones, Warren Zevon. So folks may be really familiar with the jam, but then the way that you're tweaking it, for lack of a better word to describe it, you kind of create your own space with it. When I was listening to this, and I've listened a few times, who were those artists? And from reading the book, The Cake in the Rain, a variety of those cats do factor in at different points in that. Who would you say you were like closest to of any of the cats that you put on there that you covered?
Well,
Would it be Randy?
I was real close friends with Joni Mitchell for a while, and I used to, just sit in awe and just watch her play. All the Court and Sparks songs, I saw her write those. For the most part, I was there, and I heard different versions of them. Blue, I think I was around for that. And I learned an awful lot from her, but she was a friend.
You did flea markets and antique shops too.
Yeah, yeah. Stevie, I've always been friendly with. He's a wonderful guy. He always gives me a big smile, big handshake. We just know we're buddies, that kind of a friendship. Randy and I, when we were both about 20 years old, we played on the Liza Minnelli special.
Wow.
And we both played, and they had a white piano and a white grand and a black grand on this circular platform in the middle of the stage. And we each had a piano. I can't remember I think I had black and I think he had white, but I could be wrong. The tape's out there somewhere, and I played a song called "Careless Weed" that nobody ever listened to again, ever in my whole life. And I think he played. It's the one about rain. Anyway, it was a Randy Newman song. And a couple of weeks later, I was playing Troubadour, and I invited him over to my house. And he said, "We're not going to play any pianos, are we?" And I said, "No." I said, "We're just going to shoot pool and drink beer." And he said, "Okay, I'm in." So he came over, and we just got to be pretty good friends down through the years. My sons, I have 5 boys who are in the music business were. And they actually had contracts and stuff and played on the road and did all that. The Webb brothers. And they went to one of his shows somewhere in Edinburgh or someplace like that. And he signed their album. It was one of their albums. It was called Maroon. And Randy signed it. And he said, You guys stink. And so does your dad. Randy.
That's adorable. Well, that says a lot about the nature of your friendship, how familiar you guys are. I like that. I mean, you can't. There's another great artist in that book too that comes up that I guess I would imagine you have similar kinds of stories. Is a guy you have been so strongly associated with. He was actually our guest in 2012, and That's Glenn Campbell. We had this late great jazz host here, Jimmy, named Don Gordon. He knew him, and there was this caterer to the stars out here, Steve Ozark. They both were his friends. They set me up.
I knew Steve real well.
I figured you would. Would. Yep. So, because he was obviously, in your circle there. So if you can, for folks, because it was a wonderful night sitting on a yacht telling, Glenn playing songs, telling stories, and you don't forget something like that. But for yourself, you had a lot of interactions, including being compensated with Corvettes, I read, for your work with him. Can you take us back to first hooking up with him, or anything that really just touches you, makes you feel really good to talk about with your relationship with Glenn Campbell?
Well, when I was 14 years old, I first heard Glenn singing on the radio. I was driving a tractor out in the middle of a wheat field in northwestern Oklahoma. And I heard this voice, this silver voice, and I thought he was actually singing "Turn Around, Look at Me." I don't know whether you've ever heard that.
I've heard him sing it.
It was an early Glenn Campbell hit, and I said, "That's the guy I want to write songs for." And I went out and I bought a record. It's probably the first 45 I ever bought. And I played that thing till it was as slick as a hockey rink. I wore it out. And I said, one of these days, I'm going to be writing songs for Glenn Campbell. Well, I was 14 years old, and I was 19 years old. I had a hit record with Glenn Campbell. And the first time I met him was at the Grammy Awards in 1968, and he had won a Grammy for Best Male Vocal Performance by the time I get to Phoenix. And we won a bunch of the Fifth Dimension won a ton of awards that night, and I won an award for Song of the Year. And it was just one of those nights you don't get to repeat. Sometimes you have a good night, but you don't have a night like that.
Right on.
You get maybe it's like summiting Everest. Okay, you know you're not ever going to do it again.
Good analogy.
And it's so sad because you can't come down, so you just stay up there and freeze to death. But when I really got to know him, I walked into the studio one day and he was sitting there tuning. It was all impeccable, with his starch faded jeans and his the cuffs, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up, a checkered shirt, and that coif. He was always coiffed. Had that kind of late 50s hair, and I walked up to him, and I had just gotten back from the Monterey Pop Festival, so I was wearing Indian moccasins and jeans that hadn't been washed in a week, and I had bought Johnny Rivers kept yelling at me and saying, "You got to go out and get something historic, man. This is historic. You got to go buy something historic." So I went out and I almost bought a marijuana cigarette roller. It was a wonderful thing, Dave. It was like it rolled perfect dubs, man. I almost bought that, and then the guy next door was like, Amal something or other, and he was bringing in these vests, these fleece-lined vests from South America, and they were from yaks. And I said, that's what I'm going to have. When my grandkids come and ask me about Monterey Pop Festival, I'll bring out my yak vest. And so by the time I got through the festival and I got back down to LA, it was pretty obvious that my yak vest hadn't been cured out just right, And So I walk up to Glenn, and this is my big moment. And I stick out my hand and I say, Mr. Campbell, and he says, holy mother. He said, oh, damn. He cussed the blue streak. He said, what you guys doing here? You know? and, and he said, oh, he says, that's your coat. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell. Really, I'm sorry. I took it off. He said, take that thing out in the lobby. And then we came. Now it's still my big moment, right? So I'm coming back in, and he just can't look me in the eye because I've got long, long hair. I mean, John Lennon hair,
Right.
and I've got tie-dye T-shirts on, and I'm scrawny, I'm skinny, I'm a prototype for like a hippie, and he looked me up and down 3 or 4 times because he just couldn't believe what his eyes were telling him. And I said, yeah, Mr. Campbell, I wrote By the Time I Get to Phoenix, and I put out my hand, and he kind of hesitantly put out his hand and said, when you going to get a haircut?
2 great lines from him. I love that other one. Take that thing out to the lobby.
Yeah. And so it got off to kind of a rocky start. But, I mean, politically, we were really on different sides of the canal. And there used to be a little friction over that every once in a while because he was really in with the Orange County Republicans and Bob Hope and John Wayne and all those guys who wanted to have a big war in Vietnam. And of course, none of us believed in it.
Right.
People, kids my age, we didn't believe in it, and we thought it was murder. And so we would argue from time to time about issues like that. But over a period of 40, 50 years, even that fades into the background because we got along so well musically. We spoke that language so much the same. We actually had the same dialect of the same language.
Mm.
And Glenn would stand behind the piano and look at my hands and play my chords. And Freddie Tackett, another player
From Little Feat.
Yeah, he ended up with Little Feat after Lowell died. And those are the 2 guys that only guitars players I knew who could look at the piano keyboard and just play exactly what the piano player was playing. And some of the chords, I mean, they were what Bernstein called super chords. I mean, they were tone clusters. They were all kinds of seconds and augmented fourths and then substitute basses. And I can remember, Glenn reaching out with his little finger to play that substitute bass, just to show me he could do it.
Wow.
And he was a virtuoso of virtuosos. He was loved by all the guitar players. McCartney came around and paid his respects when Glenn went out for the last tour. And he loved Roy Clark. He loved George Benson. He was we were doing a television show one time. And I tagged along, and he got in. He and George did a song, Masquerade or something like that. And they kind of got into this duel at the end. They were like trading eights.
Right.
And Glenn would play, and then George would play, and it went back and forth, and it went back and forth for the longest time. And I guess somebody, the story goes, somebody up in the control room said, "Should we fade out on this?" and and the producer said, "Hell no." He said, "This is the best television I've ever seen." And they really had a battle of the bands there going on, and they were both, needless to say, George Benson's great, Glenn's great, but when Glenn walked back into the dressing room, I was sitting on the couch, and Glenn said, "Kicked his ass."
Unreal.
So he was a fun lover. He was competitive. If he told you, if you played a song and he told you it was a hit, you could put your money in the bank because he could hear a hit. I played a song for him by Alan Toussaint called Southern Nights. And he practically ripped the record off my record player and said, "Can I have this? Can I have this?" And I said, "Hell, take it. Don't take my record player." He finally gets the record off, and he goes out of there without even saying goodbye. And Toussaint's version of Southern Nights is like, it's hallucinogenic.
Because he just wanted to work on it, you're saying, that quick. He was inspired. Is that why he just took off right away like that?
It came out 2 weeks later.
Unreal.
That whole intro thing. And it was a #1 record. And he just knew a hit. And sometimes he would listen to my songs, and I could tell he doesn't know whether it's a hit or not. Let's move on to something else, because his ears were perfect.
He's a barometer, you're saying. You used him as a barometer to determine.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't play anything for anybody without running it past Glenn.
I love that. And that's some insight right there. What's kind of crazy is there's like one tune in particular I'm looking at, because you've written all this stuff. It's just like these huge American classics, but sometimes different people would do the same jam. Like By the Time I Got to Phoenix, associated, of course, with Glenn, but also others, Johnny Rivers, Frank Sinatra, Isaac Hayes, 18-minute cover. What are your favorites? Yeah. Any comments on the differing versions of something like that kind of touch you?
Well, anything that I might say, I would preface with saying, I never sent back a check, okay? But I thought Johnny's was a pretty good version. Glenn's was a precursor and a kind of visionary track by Al DeLore, because it was very minimal. There were strings on it, but there were no trills. There were no glissandos. There were no, tricks, violin tricks, basically. It was just straight notes. And he kind of mimicked some of my string lines, but basically it was his thing. It was minimalism before minimalism.
Mm.
And when you listen to when you listen to Wichita Lineman, you hear that. And Wichita Lineman has stood the test of time. That song is still being recorded right now somewhere by somebody. And it's, I'm not gonna get into my, I don't like to brag, but the song has gotten awarded beyond anything you would believe. So I'm not even going to mention it. I'll just say that recently it was put into the National Registry of Historic Songs, which means that it went in with a few other things, film clips and different things that are indicative of what was going on in 1969. '68, and it's under a mountain. I've actually been in there. I played a concert under this mountain, and it's like it's from the Cold War era, so it's one of those like caverns, man-made caverns.
Bunker kind of place.
Yeah, huge bunker. Um, and the sound, in fact, was a little echoey in there.
Right. Some natural reverb.
But everything's but a copy of Wichita Lineman is in there too now, and I think that is an amazing tribute to Glenn. Actually, his record that went in,
Oh, wow.
and so many covers. I don't keep my discography laying around, but so many covers on Wichita Lineman that I can't count them. So that stands out as probably the best thing we did, even though a lot of people say that Reunion was the best album we did. And it was overlooked. It was one of those records that kind of slipped under the radar. But yeah, honestly, Dave, I can't remember what we were talking about.
No, it's you're sharing, you're going deep and sharing. We started with By the Time I Got to Phoenix, but you naturally, if we didn't talk about Wichita Lineman, then we'd be in trouble. So you were doing the
Okay, so I'm doing the right thing.
You're doing the right thing. I mean, as I was listening to you talking about Glenn, I mean, and that's an amazing tribute. You shared so many great stories. I'm still stuck on, like, I can just see him. You're good with radio too, Jimmy, because in radio you kind of need a visual storyteller, and you can just see him looking at that vest going, something stinks in here. Get that thing out. I mean, it's just beautiful. That was one of the funniest stories. But it made me think of the book, because in The Cake and the Rain, you're a very not everybody can turn their life story into a humorous one, and people have different gifts when they write. That's not to say there's not other ways to doing it, but one of the guys you have several encounters with, from getting pulled over driving that Cobra of yours to an incredible encounter with Elvis Presley in there, and perhaps you'd share some highlights, multiple encounters, I should say, of this cat. Because when I think of Glenn, in my mind, I just think of Elvis, and I think not a lot of people have had Elvis come up to them in a bar or whatever, like in that one story, like, talking in your ear. Share a little bit of what that felt like to you from your own humorous perspective.
Well, first, let me tell you that Glenn and Elvis were really close. They were usually playing the Strip at the same time. And I think Glenn played Caesars, and I know that Elvis played the International Hotel, and I think Glenn played Caesars. And Vegas was unrecognizable in those days. You wouldn't recognize it. I liked it better, by the way. But one of the first times I went to see Elvis at the International Hotel, I was sitting down front. I had my very own table, and I had right up next to the stage, and there were people looking at me saying, "How do I get that seat?" There was guys rolling thousands off of these big fat rolls. Then there were guys, kind of from Jersey and New York and places like that, and maybe Chicago, a few guys from Chicago, but Mr. Presley had reserved that seat for me, so nobody could move me. And I remember I was sitting right across from Jim Brown, and Elvis came out and he blew me away. I'd never seen Elvis before, but he absolutely blew me away. I not only said, this guy's is talented. I mean, he's talented. He's funny, but boy, I'd really like to sleep with him. So I got up to the edge of the stage, and he's rolling along the edge of the stage, and he used to give away scarves and kisses to the ladies. And I mean, hundreds of them. And he finally got down to me, and I looked up, and I thought, please don't kiss me. Please don't give me a scar. I had long hair. And he looked at me, and he threw something he had in his clenched in his hand. This is a true story. Uh, I guess that immediately cast suspicion on the story. But anyway, he threw he, he threw this piece of paper on my table, and it said, "Dear Gemma, come backstage, L." And Elvis actually wrote Elvis, and I thought, wow, that's neat. I guess I can put that in my scrapbook. But I wasn't prepared, like, for the end of the show, when just as soon as the audience stood up, I was grasped under my arms and stood up by two Nevada highway patrolmen, troopers, and they goose marched me all the way back through this crowd. Out of the way, get out of the way, make a hole, all the way back through this melee of human beings to this very, you wouldn't even notice it, this little door, boom, through this little door and into the cavernous, backstage area at the International Hotel. And they took me back to this little, it wasn't anything splashy as a dressing room. It was full of those beaded costumes, those flashy Elvis costumes. Right. And Tom Parker was standing there, and he says, "I guess y'all want to see Elvis." And I said, "Sure do." He said, "Well, come with me." And he led me into the back of this dressing room, and they were getting one of those big high collar white outfits with a cape. They were getting one of those ready, and Elvis was just standing there as cool as a cucumber. He probably weighed 178 pounds. His hair was jet black. He had it in a beetle cut. It was very much Vidal Sassoon. He was right on the edge of fashion.
Wow.
There wasn't nothing nostalgic about him. And he had on a kind of a black velvet blazer, and Sonny and Red, who were the two gorillas who followed him around pretty closely. They were standing there. And I was with my friend, Mike Riley, and I said, he put his hand out and he said, "Hello, Jimmy, glad to meet you." And I said, "Mr. Presley?" And he said, "Oh, not Mr. Presley." And he said, and my buddy who was supposed to be back, he was my wingman. He said, "Well, we'll just call you L then." And everybody looked at him, and I looked at him, and I whispered, "Don't call him L." And I just stood there and looked at him. He gave me his phone number, which I knew he would never use and I would never use. And then it became a kind of a regular thing. I used to go up there. I was a fan. And I'd go up there and see the show and go upstairs to what they call the Nancy Sinatra suite. And I'd go in there and hang out. And Elvis used to play Glenn Campbell over and over and over again. He would play Wichita Lineman, flip it over, play the other side, flip it over, play the other side, flip it over. It was like, but nobody would ever tell Elvis what to play on his record player. So it was sort of an evening of Glenn Campbell. So that's just by way of telling you that he respected Glenn a great
Oh,
deal.
big time.
And yeah, and uh, we got along. We laughed. We had. I think we started getting like a little bit too close. Oh, there was that one night when he was closing and Nancy Sinatra was opening, and I was at the bar downstairs just trying to stay out of the way because it was like a stampede in that lobby with both of those shows coming together. And I just like faced the mirror, ordered myself a Jack Daniels and soda. I was sitting there sipping on it, and I hear this voice, Gemma, Gemma. He called me Gemma, Jemma, Gemma. And said, Gemma? And I turned around, and it was Elvis, and he's sort of crouched over. And I said, hey, sit down. Sit down, man. He sat down, and he says, listen, Gemma, he said, I just wanted to ask you a question about your French horns. And I said, my French horns? And he said, well, he says, your French horns, they sound really good, man. And I want to know how many you use. And I said, well, I use 4. And I said, Nelson Riddle uses 4 in Mr. Sinatra's show. And he says, He says, all right. He says, I think I got that. He said, I want to thank you a bunch, Gemma. I'll see you around. And he was gone. He was like, it was like a ghost. It was like something that never happened. And the next time I went up to Vegas, he had 4 French horns in his orchestra.
Unreal.
And then, it went on for a while. And I wrote about all of it in a song called Elvis and Me. It's all in there, and it's worth listening to. But I was finally invited out of that circle in pretty graphic terms by Tom, the P.T. Barnum of the Elvis Presley show. And I remember talking to him that night, and he came out and he said, well, everybody, Elvis is tired. There were like 30 girls in there wearing white dresses, and he had picked one of them out. He said, now, Elvis has picked out his girl now, and he said, it's time for y'all to go on home. So it was some weird shit, man. And then everybody kind of formed up in a line. I remember that night John Phillips was up there, Lou Adler was up there, and we all got in a line, and Tom Parker saying good night to everybody. He's just saying good night, and then when he gets to me, he says just a word. He says, Gemma, he said, I think, you and Elvis had probably seen enough of each other for a while, and he said, probably next time I see you, it'll probably be down at the Hollywood Ranch Market.
Implying that it wouldn't be backstage hanging with Elvis?
No, and that was the end of it.
Wow. Why? Why? Like
he would get nervous. I've had I don't want to write another book about this, but so many writers, including Barry Mann and Cynthia Weil, who wrote "You've Lost That Love and Feeling." I'll just use them as an example. The very same thing happened to them. Elvis loved that song. Who doesn't? He wanted to meet them. He met. He invited them out for a bite. They went upstairs a couple of times, and then one night Tom Parker says, "You know, Barry," he says, "I don't think we're going to be seeing that much of you around here."
Whoa.
And so, that's just the way he handled people. And if he wanted to get you away from Elvis, it was a writ large. It was not a hint.
Right. No, it was real clear, all caps. I get it.
Yeah, yeah.
That is.
The other thing is he didn't have to worry about me because I wouldn't give up any publishing in those days. I still won't. So Elvis always had to have 50% of the copyright. So if he had cut MacArthur Park, which I know he really, really wanted to do, I would have had to give up 50% of the publishing to Tom. And it wasn't worth it to me.
Mm.
It wasn't worth it to me. I had the whole, I'm not going to tear down this monument that I've built, this 7-minute, 21-second thing that gets played all the time on the radio.
Right.
And start carving up the publishing, and people were asking me to edit it for Top 40 radio, and I wouldn't do that either.
Well, it's nice when you could be in a position to call the shots like that. Not every musician would have had enough success on their own to be able to stand up to those kind of forces. So, and you know what I'm saying? A lot of people would just have to bend.
Oh yes, I do. I do. And in my book Toonsmith, which is
Inside the Art of Songwriting.
Inside the Art of Songwriting, I say to young writers, I say you may have to give up publishing on a couple of songs when you're first starting out. You have to make compromises, but you want to put yourself in a position where you don't have to make those compromises.
Right.
So
no, you were very fortunate.
Listen, man, I used to trade publishing for studio time. Now that really sounds ridiculous in this day and age because everybody's got a studio in their broom closet,
right?
And so much stuff is just being cut at home or on the fly somewhere,
right?
And it's like you don't have to. You get. Studio owners are begging people to come in and cut something, anything. Just come in. Just let me tell people that you're coming in.
Right.
Right. They're in such a tight bind and have been for long time, 15 years. So the clamps have really been on, and it's getting worse right now because the COVID thing has pushed everybody onto the internet. So everybody's got a little miniature high-tech recording setup at home. Mine's not working right now. A lot of them aren't working. They're really temperamental. but everybody's got one. Just in case, you need to do a quick demo or
yeah. No, that's a great point.
You can't get into the studio.
But I like the point about the trading. I mean, how different things were back then, like trading publishing for studio time. It really does show how different the world is now.
Yeah, I mean, it shows how desperate I was.
Well, but hey, but we can always flash back a few minutes to being able to say no to the Elvis camp on that thing, So you didn't have to stay that humble. When you talk about that home rig and stuff like that, and I'm just imagining, where are you in your house? Are you anywhere near your piano?
I could see it.
I hear you. Not that close. Yeah, I was just seeing if you wanted to tinker on it at all while I had you on here, but I understand if you don't, because it's great hearing your storytelling. I mean, your storytelling is it's fascinating because you're not only humorous, but you provide some really frightening insight into how this business actually both today is, how it's been through the years. Um, it's really remarkable.
Uh,
I'm
I'd
sorry.
love to play for you, Dave, but I'm kind of tethered to this microphone.
It's one no, and I love having you tethered to it. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all the stories. Before we wrap it up, as we go to say goodbye, there's one of the funny things I was reading. I guess it's you have it in the Cake and the Rain, and it's you're among the musicians who had his name included in. Not a lot of people can say they've had their name used in song lyrics of some kind. And from the late
Jimmy Webb is God. Did you ever hear that one?
uh-uh.
That was a punk rock band. And they it was really embarrassing. They wrote a song called Jimmy Webb is God. And they put it out.
I,
Anyway, go ahead.
I was just thinking of that quote you got, the late great Gil Scott Heron in the epic "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised."
Yeah, I don't. I never had any problem with him. I kind of knew where he was coming from.
Did you know him?
Uh, and he also no,
Okay.
and he also, kind of cast some shade there on my man Johnny Cash, um, and I don't know. There was a lot of. It was a time not unlike this time,
Right. Right.
but the Black Power guys they were really angry, and they would get personal. And I guess what bothered me at the time about it is he didn't know me. He didn't know me. He didn't know I was a Democrat. He didn't know that I was that I showed up for anti for race related protests and things of that nature. He never obviously never saw my show because I was flat out about being like a lefty.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to say, I'm so far left that I come around and I'm on the right again. So, I don't know. I just thought, well, it's better to be mentioned in Black history than not mentioned at all.
No, and exactly, and it's a famous song, and you pointed it out well. It was a different time, and back then, as you also know, we didn't have this kind of communication technology where one could really study the bio and get the background on everybody so easily. So it left a lot of mystery to what someone's background might be like, and him not being able to.
The one that killed me was, and I only know this by. I know this. I will admit that I know this secondhand, but from very, very reliable sources that Gene Pitney's last words were, "I never got Jimmy Webb." So
Wow.
that's in the book. That's in the book too.
I'm not done the book yet. Forgive me. I've been still I'm getting through it, but I've been enjoying some of the stories in
And
there.
I was such a huge Gene Pitney fan, man. And Burt Bacharach and Hal David and Liberty Valance, the man who shot Liberty Valance, and it's a fantastic. He was a great singer. A Town Without Pity. I mean, he was fantastic, and all of a sudden, from his deathbed, he takes a shot at me. I just got one more thing to say.
That's so funny. It says a lot. You've had an incredible career, and what do you think's going to be coming next for you? Final question: when you think about this crazy scene we're in, and what are your plans besides staying safe and healthy? What are your plans?
Well, I just, with the help of my beautiful and dear wife, I just booked she just booked a tour for me in the UK
Wow.
about about a year from now. Uh, Now we're always open to doing business. We like to play, we like to be out there, and we like to be with the people. I always go out front and meet the audience. If they want to meet me, I'll stand there. I'll stand there till 1 o'clock in the morning and meet everybody. Um, and you can just ask some of the people out there, and they'll tell you. Um, but that's a little dangerous right now. A whole bunch of people shaking hands and doing photos and stuff like that. So that seems to be like we're going to have to rethink that. And I've got to figure out a way to get on stage without getting uh, COVID because I'm right in the age group. I'm an ex-smoker.
Right.
I'm clean as a bird right now, but I used to smoke a pack of Marlboros every day for a few years. And I think I'll be honest with you, Dave Lawrence. I think if I catch that, it's going to kill me, and I'm going to pay for my sins. And so it's just trying to work out some kind of however uneasy compromise with the venues, with the audiences, to provide an atmosphere where live performers, because a lot of us we're not, none of us from my group are spring chickens anymore.
Right.
We're all kind of in the target zone, and we need a way to begin to reestablish communication with our fans. And
Well,
it's difficult, and we're still working on it.
I would suggest it could be a neat show. Maybe you could theme it, and you could come out wearing sort of like an astronaut outfit or hazmat suit, and kind of guarantee, because you never, you don't know what's going to come. Now I hear you,
and then just do the whole show from inside the spacesuit.
Yeah, hey, they are air conditioned too, brother, so it could be comfy in there for you. So it's not like the '60s anymore.
You could. Yeah, you could have a really nice microphone in there.
You know what I'm saying? You could have it all hooked up. You could have it.
I could be the first.
You could innovate. You could be an innovator in the in this crazy world. Well, it's been a huge thrill today. We're extraordinarily fortunate to have the only artist to ever have received Grammy Awards for music, lyrics, and orchestration not long ago, releasing this great memoir, The Cake in the Rain, which will give you a laugh as well as some revealing stories behind the songs and behind some of these cats he's interacted with. Slipcover is a great way to hear a lot of classic covers, and like we were talking about earlier, kind of gives you chills because you can, especially if you put headphones on, it's like you're inside the piano. It has the sound that's very rich and warm. It's the great Jimmy Webb, who I hope, Jimmy, humbly, I really hope, because you've done a lot of these over all these years since before I was born. I hope that you had fun and this kept you somewhat engaged today.
I enjoyed it very much. I thank you for letting me on your show, and also for prompting me once in a while, because I have these little, all of a sudden I don't know someone's name, that kind of thing. So thanks for putting up with me, Dave, and maybe we can do it again sometime.
I was going to say, I really would love to stay in touch. I had so much fun, and and during this kind of time of the world, it's very therapeutic even for me.
What a guy!
I'm trying
What a guy!
Trying to make it nice. Trying to make it nice, cuz.
Aloha. This is Jimmy Webb, and I was a guest here on the show with my friend Dave Lawrence. Please do the right thing and support HPR now. What a cool thing to do. And thanks. Something I didn't tell you, man, is that is my lifelong love affair with Hawaii.
Tell me if you want.
No,
We'll do it next time.
maybe we could do it again on another
We
show.
will.
I
We
went
will.
over I went over there with
David Geffen.
America, no, with David Geffen once, but one time subsequent to that, I went over with David with
Dewey and
America,
Dewey and Jerry.
Dewey, Jerry, and I George Martin was producing their album, and we had a big Hawaiian guy I loved, Dobie Anoka, that we hung out with, and I just started going back every year. I would I would I would rent a house on Poipu
Wow.
or Anahola. I
Right.
actually had a house there once, and I had uh, my buddy and I drove around Maui before the road was complete, so we couldn't get all the way around. And I learned to scuba dive there. I got my potty card there,
Wow.
and just so many memories. Graham Nash, I used to hang out with him there.
Right. He's on
Uh,
Kauai too. That's right.
yeah, and
Todd Rundgren, was he there then?
no, I didn't see him.
Okay.
I didn't see him, and it pretty quickly. I saw the Eagles there once. They came over to my place. Um, but it was just always the culture for me. I read books on Polynesian diaspora and Queen Liliuokalani,
Wow.
Queen Liliuokalani,
Yes.
and there's uh, a beautiful book you should get, Dave, called The Lost Kingdom, about how the sugar barons and the U.S. Marines took her off her throne, physically dragged her out of the palace, and put her in jail. So my empathy has always been with the Hawaiians. I'm part Native American, and I just I love them as people. I love their music. Uh, I loved Kui Lee,
Hmm.
and I played Blaisdell Arena once with Dewey and Jerry, and I just had it's just been part of my life, just part of my life.
One time when I had Jerry on the show, I've had them on the show bunches of times. One time I was backstage talking with them, and Jerry told some story, and you came up in it. Actually, you reminded me. It was like a New Year's part. It was like you and him were in a car or something, and you were like, "Hey, let's go over to Ringo Starr's place for New Year's or something." And you guys
Yeah.
pull up to the place, and he comes out and he says. He says something about like he wouldn't let you guys in or something crazy like that. Like,
Yeah, it was. He said it's formal. He says it says on the invitation that it's formal, and we were just all hanging out in the valley. And I said, "Really?" Because we were pretty close buddies, and I saw Harry Nielsen, and I said, Harry." Harry came over, and I said, "What's the deal here?" He said, "Is this for real?" He said, "You got to go home and put your tux on." And I said, "Screw that."
so
Yeah, I remember that night. I had Jimmy Messina with me too.
okay.
I was bringing all these stars to his party.
And got shut out because you were underdressed.
Yeah, that's the only time that's ever happened to me, man. I've never been accused of being underdressed.
Well, you're a handsome bugger. It's just so funny to hear that story from another perspective. So, well, I'm giving you a
Well,
big.
I was hurt. It hurt my feelings.
Aw.
I have to tell you, I still hold it against him.
Aw.
I still hold it against him.
You-
I'm like I I nurture my grudges. I, I love my grudges.
You get a little taste of that in the book, actually. Uh,
Yeah.
hey, man, I'm giving you a big hug from 6 feet. I'm from 6 feet away. Big hug, some high fives, and
Same here, man.
we'll stay in
Give me
touch.
some bone. Give me some bone. They say.
You got it, my
That's
brother.
what. That's what the bikers say.
Well, now we're gonna say, oh yeah. Well, I guess we can give you some elbow.
Yeah. Well, it's going to change the world, Dave. It's going to change. It's going to be. You remember how, like, after JFK got assassinated, people stopped wearing hats?
Right.
It was like you turned off a switch. Nobody wore hats anymore. It was a darndest thing. And this is going to leave some permanent changes on the social landscape, I believe.
No question. There's no question. You
Have a nice day.
You stay safe, brother. God bless you, Jimmy.
Okay. All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.